So welcome back to another video here in Pennsylvania on an absolutely beautiful May morning. And we're doing another episode in our Poisonous Plants of Pennsylvania series. And I see what I'm looking for right over there. I think the first plant we did in this series was a bittersweet nightshade, but you know, what series on poisonous or toxic plants would be complete without talking about poison ivy? And I just found some growing along the trail right here. See it growing right there, the leaves of 3, let them be. Kind of growing in here, there's some more there, some more back there. We're gonna keep on. I'm gonna find a better place to sit. Talk a little bit about poison ivy. And maybe you'll learn some new things in this video. There are quite a few myths and legends, shall we say, concerning poison ivy. Concerning how you get it and how to prevent yourself from getting it and stuff like that. Some of which can be quite dangerous if you actually do what some of the folklore says you should do. But anyway, actually just looking for a nice place to sit where we can sit and talk about poison ivy a bit. It's growing all along the edge here. But unfortunately that saying, leaves of 3, let them be, doesn't always apply to poison ivy. Like right here, it's a plant that has leaves of 3, but this is not poison ivy, okay? It's not, right here is poison ivy actually. These leaves even have little notches in them. This one is not poison ivy. That's going to make poison ivy a little bit confusing too. The leaves sometimes don't always have the same shape on every plant. So, just looking for some more of it here. Yeah, right here is another batch of it. See, these leaves, well, they have little teeth on them too a little bit, but they're more smooth. But then some poison ivy, like right here, has these little indentations in the leaves. All right. And there's some more growing here. Just gotta set my little board up there for a little thumbnail shot. There you got some more growing here. All right. Yeah, some of you might be a bit concerned as to how close I was getting to the poison ivy. I'm one of those people that doesn't really get it. If I ever do, like sometimes I get just a little bit on my hands, but when I worked landscaping, I would pull it out, weed it out of gardens with my bare hands. So I just don't really, I'm one of those people that's pretty much immune to it. But we'll talk about that in this video too. That can change as you get older. And this is something I believe I mentioned not too long ago in a previous video. I'm not sure when that video is going to be uploaded. It may have been up already, but recently I did a video talking about, you know, people who are concerned about bears and snakes here in Pennsylvania, things like that, hiking with them. But in that intro to that video, I talked a little bit about poison ivy. And I think it's important to educate, rather than just fearing all the plants along the trail, because one of them could be poison ivy. Educate yourself as to what it does look like. Like I said, if you're not really good at plant ID, it might be difficult at first. Plants might all look the same to you, but as you study things, you can learn to distinguish between them. And that can give you and others, like your kids or whoever, the confidence to go hiking or to go off trail if you need to, because you can look on the edge here and see it's like there is no poison ivy right here. So you could go off trail there a little bit. Let's just keep the camera on. See if we come across any poison ivy on this section of the trail. See, I'm not seeing any here. Right now when I need to see it, it's not here. Alright. But up here is some poison ivy growing right here. Leaves of 3. A little bit down in there, so if you're looking for a place to go into the woods, you would know, not a good place. There's some growing right there too. I found a spot to set up here, and you can see I'm surrounded by poison ivy. There's quite a bit of it growing here. I might use some of this as examples a little bit later in this video, but I'm going to set you up on the tripod and we'll talk a little bit about what causes poison ivy reactions. Alright, so the main ingredient that causes the poison ivy rash is an oil called urushiol. Try saying that a bunch of times in a row. Urushiol. So there's an oil when you break open the plant, or just even rub up against it, whether it's the leaf or the vine growing up a tree, that oil is what gets on you, and that is what causes the reaction with your skin. And there are other plants that have that same oil. Poison oak, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and another plant called poison sumac, which grows here in Pennsylvania and the East Coast. So on that line, one myth to dispel is that if you are allergic to poison ivy, you are also allergic to poison sumac, or vice versa. I've had a number of people tell me that, you know, they get poison ivy but they don't get poison sumac, or that they get poison sumac but not poison ivy, and that's just not true. If you get one, you get the other. It's the same oil, the same ingredient in both that causes it. So what's going on? Maybe some people are just confused, and some people might get mad at me for that, but I think people confuse. There are different types of sumac here in Pennsylvania, so maybe some people think all sumacs are poisonous or, you know, cause a rash, but they all don't. So like I said, if you get one, you get the other. Maybe one has more oil than the other, so you might be more susceptible to one versus the other, but if you're allergic to one, you're allergic to both. But I think I'll go ahead and insert a clip from a tree book I have showing you what poison sumac leaves look like. They're very different than poison ivy, but I'll go ahead and show you what they look like. All right, so this is from the book Trees of North America, Princeton Field Guide, and here's what poison sumac looks like right down here. It has these compound leaves, but it is similar to other sumacs as well that we have in the area. Here's staghorn sumac and smooth sumac. So there are similarities to other sumacs, as you can tell, so it could get confusing. So one new thing that I learned by researching, I was looking up urushiol, and there's a similar ingredient found in mangoes, on the skin of the mango, not the flesh. So if you get a strong allergic reaction to poison ivy and poison sumac, you could get a reaction just from touching the skin of a mango. So that's kind of interesting. You can always learn something new. I don't have to worry about that at all. I do like mangoes, but I'm one of the few people that doesn't really get poison ivy. I think I mentioned that earlier in the video. About 15 to, well, depending on what the statistics you read, about 15 to 25% people actually don't get poison ivy or have a very low reaction to it. But you shouldn't get arrogant about that. Studies have shown, though, that as you come in, like the more and more in contact you come with it, the more susceptible you can become to the oil, to the urushiol. So if you get kind of arrogant about it, you could pay the price later. Because I've read accounts of that where people who were kind of immune to it for most of their life, then when they hit their 40s and 50s, all of a sudden, boom, they could get it. So don't be too cocky about things if you don't get poison ivy. And something else I want to mention too is that I hear a lot of people talk about poison oak. Poison oak is not native to the East Coast. Poison ivy is. Poison ivy is an East Coast plant, and poison oak is a West Coast plant. But they do grow on either side of the coast too. Poison ivy has been introduced either deliberately or accidentally to the West Coast, and the same with poison oak. But probably where you're going to find poison oak is in more developed areas, like urban suburb areas. Out here in the woods, poison oak doesn't really grow for the most part, so I hear a lot of people saying they get poison oak. But let me show you why poison ivy gets confused with poison oak a lot of times. So let's take a look at some of the poison ivy growing here again. This is what it typically looks like. See, the leaves are just kind of oval shaped and smooth on the edges. But then some of them, like this one here, they have like notches on the side. This one almost looks like a sassafras leaf. You see the notches there, right there? They don't have that smooth oval look to them. A couple others here. Like these, they look almost like poison oak. Almost, the leaves take on like an oak shape to them a little bit. But then others are just nice and round again. So that's why poison ivy leaves can be quite confusing sometimes. Like once again, here's some that are just nice and round on the edges. And then right up here, there's some that have these teeth on the edges, like this, that almost look like oak leaves. Yeah, so you could encounter poison oak here in Pennsylvania in some localities, but for the most part, if you're out in the woods, out in the wilds, you're encountering poison ivy, just to be honest with you. Like I said, poison ivy has different variations to it. And I also learned that too, there's actually 2 separate species of poison ivy that grow here in the East as well. So I'm not really sure what the differences are between it offhand. But another thing to remember too is that oil. Like I just walked through here, so I probably have some of that oil on my jeans. But like I said, I'm not concerned because I don't really get poison ivy. But if someone else would handle these jeans, they could potentially get a reaction from that. And that oil, the urushiol oil, can last on items like your clothes for like up to 2 years, I've read. So yeah, if you're got budding flies out here today. So yeah, if you're in an area or you're encountering poison ivy, one thing to do is just to wash your clothes after that hike. All right, swat the flies. And then some other myths and no-nos when it comes to poison ivy. I have heard from a number of people this myth that if you eat a poison ivy leaf, that you will then become immune to the poison ivy. Yeah, don't try that. The thing is, if you're already immune to it, it probably won't do anything to you. But if you are not, if you're someone that's susceptible to the urushiol oil, ingesting the poison ivy is a bad thing. That oil will get on the mucus linings of your mouth and your throat, and you will get yeah, imagine having poison ivy inside. It's just not a cool thing. Some people have been seriously damaged by doing stuff like that. And another important thing, you don't want to burn poison ivy. Like if you're clearing brush on your property and there's poison ivy grows up trees and stuff or on the ground, if you're just throwing all that brush on a pile with poison ivy in it and burning it later, that oil gets into the air, into the smoke, and if someone breathes that in, it gets into their lungs. Yeah, imagine having poison ivy on your lungs, or a reaction. So that can cause a lot of damage to people too. I've heard some stories of people who breathed in that kind of smoke and they end up in the hospital having an adverse reaction to that. So don't burn anything that has poison ivy on it. And to finish this video off, we could talk on and on about different cures for poison ivy. We might do some of that later in some of my edible and medicinal plant videos. Like there's a plant out here called jewelweed that is supposed to help with relieving the symptoms of poison ivy. But I think I'll save that for another episode, talking about some of the potential natural cures for poison ivy. Obviously there's a bunch of over-the-counter medicines you can take and things like that. Another fly. They're out today. So yeah, I think that'll be it for poison ivy. It's out there. Watch out for it. I know I hear some people say that even if they just walk next to it, they get it. But then there's people like me who can pull it up, grab the plant, pull it by the roots and not get it. So that's just the way it is. But like I said, don't be too arrogant about it because that can change later in life. So yeah, if you've had your own experience with poison ivy, you can comment down below and tell us your story. It might be kind of interesting to, if it's some kind of horror story about getting poison ivy in your lungs or something. But anyway, but as always folks, thanks for coming along and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.